This is TWiT.
I came up with the idea for a magazine that covered technology the way Rolling Stone covered music. And that idea turned into Wired. And I wasn't the person who made it happen. I just was the person who had a similar idea and happened to run into the person who made it happen, who brought me on board as a partner, and off we went. And then from there, lots of chaos ensued.
So did you actually run into that? I mean, that's part of the lore that like you were the guy they roped in from Berkeley because you had done a project that was what I read about, creating the Rolling Stone for the digital age. Like, did you actually just run in, or did they seek you out, or did you seek them out? Tell us more about that.
Well, they sought, it's a funny story. They sought me out. But only after they sought out a guy that I worked with at that magazine we just discussed, Mac Week, the Macintosh magazine. They sought him out first. He was older, more senior, and they offered him the job that I ultimately took. And he said no. And he said no because he thought, it was like a fly-by-night startup with like no funding and, just 2 or 3 crazy people in a, rundown warehouse, full of garbage. I mean, it was really not something that if you were a responsible person with kids, you would have taken this offer, right? So he said, but I know someone, and he's just graduating from Berkeley. He's a great guy, a lot of energy. And so he gave them my number. And I was like up in the Sierra Nevada backpacking or something. And I came back through a small town on my way home and checked my voicemail. I mean, you used to have to do that. You stop at a payphone and like check your voicemail. And there was a message from this guy, Louis Rossetto, from a place called Wired. And I was doing a lot of freelance writing to put myself through graduate school. And I thought he was like a PR guy, and Wired was probably some networking company that he wanted to pitch me. And I almost deleted it. But I thought, if it was a decent story, I always need money. I was going to move to New York and try to write for all those publications. So, you never know. So I call him back, and he proceeded to pitch me the idea that I had pitched to the Graduate School of Journalism as my master's thesis. I mean, it was literally the same idea. And I was like, oh my God, are you really doing this? And he's like, yeah. And I'm like, where are you? Can I meet you? And so I went in and met with him and Kevin Kelly, and the 3 of us became the editors that started Wired. I mean, as soon as I walked into that office, I was like, I'm so in. It's so in. This is going to be awesome. It was like forming a band, it really was. It was like, I can play music with these guys, let's go write some music.
So is there a garage story? Where did you guys start? Did you start? You started in San Francisco.
We started on the top floor of a warehouse in what is in South Park in San Francisco, which is a now very famous sort of startup ghetto. Back then, as I understand it, I did not source or find the building, but when I walked into it, you had to step over the junkies, and literally it was full of garbage. The garbage had kind of been cleared into the back of the warehouse, but it was very, very inexpensive real estate. It's now some of the most expensive real estate in San Francisco. But in 1992, it was, south of Market by about 5 or 6 blocks, off the beaten path, but a big, airy loft kind of warehouse situation, and lots of room to grow. And we stayed in that 2 South Park space for a couple of years until we outgrew it and went 1 block over to the other side of South Park, where Wired still is today, at least the San Francisco offices are, on 3rd Street.
Mm. So, yeah, I remember I worked on 3rd Street in 99. So then I worked in the same building as the Wired.com.
Yeah, that was down the street.
Yeah.
Louis, I think, was really a very, he had a very clear sense of where he thought the future was going. And in 1993, after we had some initial success with the magazine, it became very evident how important the internet was. And so we wanted to do an internet version of the magazine. And we had an argument between calling it Wired.com or calling it Hotwired, and making an entirely new brand and reinventing everything just for the internet because it's a new medium, and why you can't just take one medium and put it on the next medium, right? That's the mistake that they made with radio plays on television and you know, so on. So we decided to not only make an entirely new brand, Hotwired, we would have it in an entirely different building. And so that was the building that you went to, because that was, you know, their space and so they basically were, you know, told to go figure it out, and we, as the original founders of the company, would manage them. But they basically, you know, ran a pirate ship over there.
Yeah. I couldn't remember what it was called. I remember it wasn't Wired.com. Yeah, it was Hotwired, and they did Code Monkey and all those things.
So many. And we actually, we would have management meetings. And I remember one of them where, you know, we had hired, I think, somewhere about 40 staff at Hotwired, 40, which was more than we had on the magazine. During this meeting, you know, which is only 5 of us, right? The question arose, how are we going to pay them? You know, we'd hired them, so now what, right? And reasonable question, I think, to ask is, you know, and I was the managing editor of the magazine and overall of the what we called Wired Ventures, which owned all the operating companies, including Hotwired. It's like, how are we going to pay these people? And we needed a business model for Hotwired, for the online site. And given that it was one of the first online sites that was commercial in the world, there was GNN, which is O'Reilly's site, and Yahoo had, I think, just launched, but it was very early. We just invented in that meeting what became the banner ad. You know, and I'll never forget, Lewis, you know, I suggested this banner ad, but I suggested putting it at the bottom of the screen because I was basically stealing the idea from an online service called Prodigy, which maybe some people listening would remember. Yeah. And Lewis said, no, let's not put it at the bottom. Let's put it at the top so that people can scroll it out of the way. And I thought that was genius, you know. It's just like people could flip the page on the magazine and, you know, make it go away, make the ad go away, right? And then, of course, the technology question arose, which is, how are we going to serve this ad? Where we use the same, you know, content management system that we had built to serve our, you know, HTML content, our web editorial content. And the decision was taken that that would be crazy. We have to, because, you know, remember, I was a journalist and I had a master's degree in journalism. We had to separate the lines between church and state. So we created a different technology infrastructure for the advertising as opposed to the content. And that created an ad server. And the rest is kind of history. The ad tech business, DoubleClick, you know, that entire kind of the bifurcation between content and advertising, and the whole ad tech infrastructure that has built up, the tens of billions of dollar industry around that, started with, you know, should we put the ad tech together with the content tech or not? And if you look at the one company that has essentially reintegrated them, right, so that the ad and the content tech is the same, it's Facebook. Oh. And there's a whole 20-year history between that meeting at Wired and today, where my career, you know, has to do with trying to integrate those two sides in a business model that doesn't destroy everything it touches. You know, those are the two endpoints: the decision in that meeting and Facebook today.